Hello and welcome everybody to today's program for launch of Absolute Power, the new book by Sucheta Dalal and Debashis Basu. First, let me place on record how honored and thankful we are to have Dr. Subramanian Swamy, who has very kindly agreed to launch this book. For someone who has always stood for what is right and fought against what is wrong, we cannot think of a better person who should be launching Absolute Power. After all, this book focuses on the kind of wrongdoing that can happen when any institution acquires absolute power, no matter how operationally efficient it is. Few words about Dr. Swamy. As many of you would know, Dr. Swamy is an economist, has been a minister with a cabinet rank, and now a member of parliament. But unlike most politicians who have forgotten why they are in public life or who are never interested in public interest, Dr. Swamy has spent his time fighting for the right causes. At any time, he is fighting 4 to 5 high-profile cases in high courts and the Supreme Court, all to improve the system. I would also like to thank Jagdish Shetty and Ashish Shetty for helping us coordinate and fit us into Dr. Swamy's schedule. Before starting today's main program, I would like to chart out 6 ground rules for all of us to follow. First, we have kept you on mute and will unmute you when you want to ask a question during the question and answer section. For optimal viewing, we request you to keep the webinar on speaker mode view. This meeting is being recorded and would be uploaded on our YouTube channel, that is youtube.com/Moneylife TV, so you can watch it again. During the question and answer, we request you to raise the hand button available on Zoom if you want to ask any question. Please feel free to use the chat feature on Zoom to share your comments, questions, and observations. But my sincere request would be to send the message to everyone. Also request you to not to send us personal messages during the session, as we would not be able to monitor or respond to it. Please note your homes and backgrounds are visible to all during the webinar. So in case you wish to protect your privacy, use the stop video button on Zoom. Now coming back to the book. As you may be aware, the 1992 Harshad Mehta scam led to profound changes in capital market regulations and infrastructure. One of these was to set up the NSE as a cleaner alternative to the century-old Bombay Stock Exchange. Unfortunately, in a supreme irony, the NSE itself got embroiled in the algo scam, originating in its sanctum sanctorum, the co-location servers for high-frequency trading. Absolute Power is the story of NSE's commercial success, which led to arrogance and fall from grace, even as it continues to remain a highly profitable and near monopoly. While I personally had an inside view and been involved in Moneylife successfully fighting back the 100 crore defamation case against NSE, let's hear from the authors Debashis Basu and Sucheta Dalal why they wanted to write this book. May I invite Basu sir to share with us the overall context in which the book was written, and then Sucheta ma'am to share more information about the algo scam and all those who helped them in this process.
Thanks, Yogesh. Hello and welcome to everybody to the launch of Absolute Power, our book on the National Stock Exchange. I join Yogesh in expressing our gratitude to Dr. Swamy for agreeing to launch our book. We are indeed very, very honored with your presence, sir. We had planned to write this book under a different set of circumstances way back in 2004 or so. Having seen market reforms from very close quarters, as well as the formation of NSE, we wanted to document that very exciting period. Well, it was good that we didn't write that book on NSE at that time. Clearly, there were aspects of the NSE management that we were completely unaware about, even though we knew them very, very closely. We believe we have now written the untold story of NSE, the invisible side. And this could have been written only after the algo scam, which was part of a pattern, and I'll explain why. From 2004, after the Congress-led UPA government came to power, and right until 2015, when Moneylife broke the algo scam, NSE's character had changed dramatically. NSE's operational success is a unique example, even in the global context, but the founding management team, supported by a pliant set of board of directors, somehow were not satisfied. So firstly, they would go out of the way to neutralize any serious competition at any cost. Secondly, NSE wanted to appear as a perfect institution, incapable of making any mistakes or any blemishes, as if it was above all criticism. This facade was an important part of its absolute power. It had to be seen as infallible. But exchanges, you would ask, are very closely regulated. How could it pull it off? It could not have pulled off these two impossible objectives without having policymakers and regulators literally in its pocket. I know what I'm saying, and we have proved this in the book. Our book cites plenty of examples of how it worked to kill competition. These were so egregious that it simply could not happen without the full backing of the regulator, which is SEBI, as well as the Finance Ministry. There is a particular word in the financial world for this, which is called regulatory capture. NSE achieved regulatory capture with remarkable success between, as I said, that period 2004 to 15, when most of its shenanigans happened, steadily increasing over the years to peak under the chairmanship of C.B. Bhave and U.K. Sinha at SEBI, with Mr. P. Chidambaram as the finance minister supporting the whole endeavor. Let me narrate one very interesting anecdote of NSE's long reach in New Delhi way back in 2005. The story is how it blocked NASDAQ, technologically the most advanced exchange at that time, from acquiring a dominant stake in BSE. The NASDAQ team had been trying to make an investment in India. First, they identified NSE, but NSE wasn't interested. Why would it be? Then NASDAQ wanted to come into BSE. The team had worked on this project for almost 18 months and got the green signal from everybody, the RBI and two SEBI chairmen, which is J.N. Bajpai and M. Damodar. Everything was signed and sealed, and an announcement was supposed to be made the next day. You can well imagine an investment banking team is working, legal team is working, there are international players. So they have dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's, right? On the previous night, the deal was scuttled by a sudden and mysterious issue of Press Note 4, which capped direct foreign investment at 5% for stock exchanges. Overnight, it scuttled the NASDAQ deal for BSE and also ensured that the New York Stock Exchange had to be content with a much smaller holding of 5%. Mr. P. Chidambaram was the finance minister. Had BSE tied up with NASDAQ, NSE would have serious competition, but that was not to be. BSE's attempts to build up its strengths through acquisitions were repeatedly scuttled in subsequent years. I'm not going to go into all the details. It's all there in the book. You have to go and read it. But I'll point out another shocking case, because this is live. This is now a listed company, and you can well imagine the wealth that NSE has got out of it. This was a shocking case of BSE being stopped from acquiring computer age management services, CAMS now, citing conflict of interest. But there was no such conflict of interest when NSE wanted to do that and was easily allowed to do so by SEBI. NSE's stake in CAMS is now worth over 2,400 crores. NSE regulates brokers, but SEBI had no problem in NSE in allowing NSE to acquire a stake in Omnisys, a subsidiary of a broking company, despite blatant conflict of interest. NSE launched its co-location services legally in 2010. There was no approval from SEBI, and SEBI had done nothing about it. So NSE has been repeatedly let out with a warning for serious violations, such as a fat finger crash in 2010 and client code modification, which is in 2012. Those 10 years, NSE wielded absolute powers, and it was astonishingly brazen. Unless you read the book, and where we have all put it all together, it's all in the same place. These are all disparate events, and you would know the enormity of what's been happening in those 10 years. NSE's operational efficiency was obviously visible to all. We know it's a splendid, well-run exchange, although there have been technical glitches now. But what was invisible were these hidden unfair advantages, which contributed immeasurably to its success. We can't turn the clock back, but you can well imagine what would have happened if there was a level playing field. Now, all this is very ironical, because those who witnessed the evolution of formal market regulations in the early 90s, and Dr. Swamy was part of the earliest reforms from Chandrasekhar government and then on to the P.V. Narasimha Rao government, would know that NSE itself was launched to break the monopoly of BSE, whose operations then were controlled by brokers and were marred by frequent strikes, settlement delays, and uncontrolled speculation. So here was a monopoly that was being countered with a new exchange, but that exchange itself came to acquire absolute powers. Now, there's a bigger picture here. NSE is another example of a very peculiar kind of Indian company. This is one of the things that Sucheta has noticed and written about repeatedly, which is a public-private partnership that thrived outside any scrutiny and all part of the financial sector. The others are ILNFS and Stock Holding Corporation of India and NSD. But these four are all unlisted and so not subject to the stock market scrutiny. There is no analyst going after this. There's no disclosure to the stock exchange, nothing, right? Although the bulk of the shareholdings, their funding came from the public sector undertakings, life insurance corporation, state bank, this, that sort of thing. They were all run like a private sector companies with similar perks, privileges, and by a small group of people. They've been operating in the penumbra of private or public labor, as and when it suited them. On policy issues, they are public sector. On commercial issues, they are private. The state, all of them are outside the RTI Act or CAG or Vigilance Agency or even the Parliament. As they say, sunlight is the best disinfectant. And so, hidden from scrutiny, it is no surprise that each of these four companies were afflicted by scams. In SDL in 2006, which is an IPO, multiple application scams, Stock Holding Corporation, which Mr. P. Chidambaram and his company were hijacking in Singapore, an e-stamping project, which is very scandalous. And Sucheta has exposed that scam in 2007. NSE itself, 2010 to 2014 period, the algo scam, and later, of course, ILFS, which is now still unraveling, one of the huge scams of the last few years. A lot of people may wonder what has changed now that the founding team, which wielded absolute power so ruthlessly, has departed under a cloud. Well, last year, the number of broker defaults in NSE hit a historic high, some 22 or 23 of them. It never happened before. This year, the exchange faced an embarrassing technical glitch, one in a long series of such glitches, and its risk management system, which is the core, the heart of any exchange's operations, simply failed. There is a strange reluctance on the part of SEBI even today to act on NSE. For its illegal stake purchase in scam, on which I said they made about 2,500 crore sitting profits, SEBI has slapped NSE with just 1 crore fine, while NSE has got away with several other such purchases, power exchange, and so on and so on. But then, as we all know, that is a story of Indian regulators. The big guys, the rich guys with long arm get away with a little tap on their wrists for their wrongdoing. I think I'll stop here. After all, we want you to read the book where there's much more masala. So you should buy it and read it. And I now hand it over to Sucheta to describe the algo scam, which was an immediate trigger to write this book. Over to you, Sucheta.
Thanks, Debashis. Debashis has already given you the background of the context of absolute power. But this book is also about my own personal journey from being a huge supporter of the National Stock Exchange and an admirer of the unparalleled achievements of a team of professionals in the face of enormous pressure from the broker lobby, to slowly turning into a critique after encountering its secretive ways and the dubious manner in which it crushed competition and was intolerant of questions. In fact, this story of the book started in Jan 2015 when a whistleblower who called himself Ken Fong complained to SEBI about scams at NSE's algo and co-location facility. He sent a copy of that letter to me. After working to try and verify the contents for several weeks and sharing it with key sources, we were convinced that there was merit in the whistleblower's detailed letter and published it online. I followed this up with an article calling for an investigation into what the whistleblower had said after trying to get a response from the NSE several times. I also heard that SEBI had simply forwarded the letter to NSE and filed its reply without taking any action. My article led immediately to NSE filing a 100 crore defamation suit, and the enormity of NSE filing that case against me is probably understood by old-timers at SEBI like Mr. Pradeep Kar, who's been an executive director, or Mr. Singhvi, who know how I went way beyond my role as a journalist to help the exchange in the early days because we thought this was a professional exchange which was helping clean up the capital market. As we have said in this book, adversity reveals who stands for the truth, and you also get to know who are your well-wishers when the chips are down. I believe that there's also a good force out there that comes to your rescue when you do the right thing. And I'm going to tell you how it worked for me. We found plenty of amazing and unexpected help. Insiders in different organizations who simply cannot be named or quoted helped us in many different ways. I want to thank all of them for their silent support. Thanks to one such silent supporter, I was stunned one day to get a call from Dr. Subramanian Swamy asking me about the NSE case. We were absolutely down in the dumps on that day, and when he offered to represent us, I cannot even begin to tell you what a morale booster it was. After all, who in India understands the law of defamation better than Dr. Swamy? He was extremely generous with information, ideas, case laws that would help our defense. Uh, Thanks to him, Advocate Ravi Raghunath even helped draft our first response. We cannot thank Dr. Swamy enough for what he did. Unfortunately, the Bombay High Court had its own rules and did not permit him to represent us. Then came the second step. Our case was listed under one of the most extraordinary judges in India, Justice Gautam Patel. You don't have to believe me, just Google his many remarkable judgments to understand what I mean. Our book describes what led to the extraordinary order which asked NSE to pay 50 lakhs in cost, most of it going to two hospitals, Tata Memorial and Messina Hospital, very correctly, and a small sum of 3 lakhs to Debashish and me. The legal community was stunned by that order. But as a friend from a top law family pointed out, NSE probably spent that kind of money on every single day hearing in court by getting a battery of expensive lawyers who were ranged against us in court. SEBI, which was completely under NSE's thumb so far, slowly began to wake up only after that court order. Until then, the regulator was doing nothing more than issuing bland statements. It now asked its technical advisory committee to look into the issue. This is where we had the third stunning good fortune. The Technical Advisory Committee was headed by another extraordinary individual, Professor Ashok Chinchinwala of IIT Madras. He is upright, incorruptible, afraid of nobody, and was not a part of NSE's large cabal and determined to get to the bottom of this issue. Things began to move rapidly after he took charge, and you have to read the book for more details. But it's important to mention that absolute power is not about the algo scam alone. In fact, it's about this entire journey of NSE, which started life under Dr. R.H. Patil, an extraordinary individual, and how it grew under a professional team into the third largest exchange, and then over the next 23 years, market dominance and super profits converted it into a nasty, secretive organization, hubris set in, and finally, it was like a mom and pop outfit at the highest level behind a facade of utmost professionalism. We've written about how NSE was repeatedly caught in wrongdoing, but the regulator was too timid to punish it. Things reached a stage when the NSE top brass seemed to be taking orders only from the finance minister, completely bypassing the regulator. This was during the time when P. Chidambaram was the finance minister, with Joint Secretary K.P. Krishnan, who was like a proxy SEBI chairman and also very thick with the exchange. Had NSE merely used its clout and its perceived efficiency to remain a dominant exchange, there would have been no story to tell. But regulatory capture by the NSE meant crushing all competition by fair means or foul. The regulator did not bother to play referee and ensure a level playing field. Consequently, while SEBI was set up as the first independent regulator with domain expertise, almost every issue at that time which involved competition had to either go to the civil court, Supreme Court, or the Competition Commission of India. Now, it does not require genius to know why SEBI repeatedly failed to rein in NSE. There was a clear perception that NSE was being protected by the finance ministry, and one can only speculate why this was happening. Our book is all facts and no conjecture, so do read it. Let me close by expressing our deepest gratitude to those who helped us emerge successfully from NSE's pressure and slander and to write this book. As I've said earlier, many cannot be named. Fortunately, there's so many that we can thank openly. Senior counsel and friend Shyam Diwan for his guidance and for keeping our feet on the ground. In fact, after Justice Patel's order, he told us this is as good as it gets. It may be all downhill from here. But luckily, it wasn't. A big thanks to Senior Counsel Janak Dwarkadas for agreeing to appear pro bono for us and for ensuring that Justice Patel's judgment still stands. Our grateful thanks to the legal team of Rahul Dwarkadash, Sharon Jaktiani, Nirman Sharma, and Aris Gazdar for their invaluable help, all of it pro bono. Advocate Bapu Malcolm, our friend, has been a big support through all this, and he even appeared on our behalf. Harsh Desai for his moral support. We are also very grateful to Pradeep Kar, former ED of SEBI, and financial experts R. Balakrishnan, Rajendra Gill, Rohit Tilwalkar for reading the first draft of this book and making many important suggestions. With some others who read it, who again can't be named. Our most grateful thanks to Dr. Neeta Mukherjee, who took charge of editing this book, as she has done with our previous books as well. She does this with extraordinary patience and skill. Sudha Raghavendra helped polish the draft and made so many valuable corrections and suggestions, all at great speed. And then, of course, my colleagues Yogesh Sapkale, Maya, Pankaj Raheja, Akshay, Arvind, Ajay, and Tushar. And finally, and very importantly, my brother Sunil, who's been one of our biggest sounding boards, and my mother for her silent support. With this, I hand it back to Yogesh so that we can go over to Dr. Swamy to formally launch the book.
Thank you, ma'am. Now here comes today's moment. May I request Dr. Swamy to launch Absolute Power, written by Sucheta Dalal and Debashis Basu, and hold it up.
Yes, I'm holding it up as best as I can. Yes, and this is it. And I've taken the cover off. I mean, the usual ribbon and all. I thought it's a waste of time. So I've been through the book. I mean, it's not easy to go through this book because it's so engrossing. Every sentence had a meaning. But still, I went through it, and I don't think I can do justice to this book in a review talk here unless I have 2 hours. But since I have to stick to an agenda because I have another engagement later on, and both Sucheta and Debashis were kind enough to accommodate my calendar. And therefore, I will speak about for 20 minutes because what I want to do is to place this book in the perspective of what we need in this country today. It's a book which has come at a very appropriate time because we are now moving very quickly into the cyberspace when it comes to financial issues. And there the accountability issue is going to be a huge one. Already here, in accountability is the main issue that has brought Sucheta and Debashis together to write this book. And it was because of a fortunate situation where a Mr. Ken Fong or somebody like that, is he a Chinese? I don't know. But he had given a complaint to the NSE, and he gave only one person a copy of it, and that was Sucheta, which is understandable because she has a long history of coming out in newspapers. Some newspapers didn't like it, so she had to discontinue with them. But I remember in the Harshad Mehta case, she had taken it all apart. And we in Parliament used it very extensively on that matter. So now I will say, with a complex technology, we are to be very careful because if we don't understand it, we don't have a regulatory machinery which is equally intelligent and knowledgeable, we can land the economy into a big mess. I'll give you the example of 2007, 2008. What was it that really brought the economic, whatever it is called, the collapse in the Western economies? It was the concept of derivatives. What had happened is that the banks were lending very generously loans for building houses. And building houses in America has always been a method of generating the economy. And so what happened is over the years, a set of Harvard Business School wizards got together with Lehman Brothers And they came up with this concept of a derivative, which means that they would go to the bank and say, we will give you, you have given a loan that's now stuck till the installments come and clear it. We'll give you 95% of the money now that you lent out, and we'll keep 5% for our commission. So the banks were delighted. And therefore, what they did was they agreed, and this process went on. And so the banks, after getting this 95%, decided why not finance more housing projects. And in the process, the prime projects had all got exhausted, and the banks then went, disregarding the risks involved, into what they call is the subprime projects, and that's why sometimes called the subprime crisis. So what happened is then a small, it went to people who are really lower middle class, who didn't have a bank balance, but they took a loan, and then the banks financed their buying the house. And around 2007, a recession began to set in. And so many people were losing their jobs. So those who had, in fact, taken a loan to buy a house, they couldn't pay the installments. And that's why those who are well-to-do, they were the prime buyers, and there was no problem. But this subprime group, where there were people living on the margins, they began defaulting. Now, the bank had no responsibility because it had now been given as a derivative to the Lehman Brothers. And Lehman Brothers suddenly started having hundreds and thousands of houses in their hand, and no one to buy it. And how could they maintain it? And so Lehman Brothers essentially collapsed because of that. So one derivative brought about a collapse. Today, we have a much more, heading towards a much more complex system. And in that, the preview is what Sucheta and Debashis have pointed out, that this is how it happened with the National Stock Exchange, which was at one stage a matter of, great praise by everybody, because it was computerizing. Unlike the Bombay Stock Exchange, that computerized, things were much more efficient and so on. And how the same computers were then turned around to reach a situation where money was being siphoned out. So the book, divides the question of efficiency and fraud coming together. Today, with this cyber currency, is there any scope presently as it's there for any kind of regulatory mechanism? No one has thought of it, but it's already coming. It's going in a big way, and this is ideal for money laundering and so many other things. And there's no government because it's directly between buyer and seller. So it's a technology which can be manipulated by anybody. Today, the Chinese are sitting on a lot of bitcoins, and people think that they can do anything online there through computers and through their cyber activities. They have shut down our Bombay electricity as a demonstration. They have done it. The Russians have done it in the oil pipeline in America. So everything has now become so centralized around this computer technology that what both Sucheta and Debashis have put together is worth reading, because they have what they call as demystified this whole NSE scandal. Because I know large numbers of people who have come to me asking me, what is all this scandal about? How did this happen? And I myself wasn't as clear as I have now become after reading this book. Therefore, this is a book which is worth reading from cover to cover. It's something that I'm sure that there will be a sequence to a sequel book because more developments are going to come. But we need to understand how this happened. And that is why I think we must look at the later chapters where she speaks about, these are my words, huh? I'm not putting words in her mouth, crooked finance minister and a compromised NSE officials, that is the National Stock Exchange officials, and a cowardly regulatory body. These three came together, not formally, but they came together in operations. And this NSE, from an efficient and much praised stock exchange, became a medium for looting of funds of unsuspecting investors. So a lot of people have lost money. So many people have petitioned me, but there's nothing we could do because they had got into an agreement and there was no regulatory machine to do it. The SEBI, as it was pointed out in the by just now by Sucheta, that SEBI was only doing a rapping on the knuckles. And that didn't matter because millions, I mean, crores of rupees were siphoned off. And of course, they went abroad. So now what we have to do is how to defang the power of officials in the NSE to be able to do this in the future. We do need a stock exchange like the NSE because it's we must get it computerized. I think BSE is also now moving in that direction. There should be a competition. And I certainly think that Indian stock market has been thought of in the West as a rigged affair. As far back as 1987, I'd gone back to teach for 2 years at Harvard after the 1984 debacle of the opposition. And I went to see my old teacher, Professor Samuelson, who considers the Einstein of economics. And we took, as usual, took me out for lunch in the faculty club of MIT. And while we were discussing, the stock market question came because he had written a piece for the Newsweek saying that stock market, don't go to any agent, just put a chart on in your study and throw darts. And throw 10 darts, and wherever they land, invest in that. So I was shocked. I told him that I read this. Is it true? He said, yes, I have done it. And he says, I am making money in the stock market by throwing darts on a chart. So I said, can you do this in India? He said, no. I said, why? He says, it's a rigged market. Everybody knows that Indian stock market is rigged. I won't do it with a dart. Please don't do it with a dart. So over the years, lack of strong institutions, and the institutions came, then the politicians in power selected rubber spine people who didn't have the nerve to do anything unless someone forced them to do it. And then, of course, they diluted it and took it into areas where there was hardly any punishment given. So therefore, we are a growing economy. We have the potential to be a global economic power. I've never had any doubts about that. We can easily overtake China. But these require the efficiency in the use of resources. After all, growth rate is dependent inversely to the efficiency in which you use capital, and which we measure it by what we call as the incremental output capital ratio. Now, ours is so high, it's 6 and 7. That means if you invest 6 rupees, you are entitled to get 1 rupee per year in perpetuity from that investment. Japan, in its peak period of growth, had an incremental capital output ratio only 1.8, and we are 6. It's the most inefficient use of capital is our country today. And if we bring about efficiency, growth rate will go without any additional taxation or any other mobilization of resources. So this stock market is a way of moving money around to people who want to invest and people who want to earn a secure interest or at least a guaranteed interest. And so this process has to have faith, and that means confidence. And in that context, I feel that you must now make, the country must demand it. And after all, these are all influential people who go to these stock markets. They must say that in the long term, this is only going to harm all of us. And books like this would be something that will be welcome. I also, whatever humble way Sucheta might have described the court case, it is the nastiest court case I have seen, where the defamation was also being carried out outside the court and through newspapers and so on. And the NSE couldn't bear the thought that anybody could challenge it, and thought that 100 crores would, make them come for a compromise. And nothing of the kind happened. Sucheta and Debashis stuck it out. And today we have, therefore, an example that the mightiest in financial world can be fought for the benefit of the public of India. So this 100 crore demand of the NSE ended up with 50 lakhs being paid at the very beginning, with 47 of that being given for hospital welfare, and this was paid by NSE, and ultimately the situation reached where NSE's own internal assessment was that this is a dangerous area going, so let's not push it any further. And that's how the whole thing won in a complete victory for Sucheta. I will only say this, that this is a book which everybody must read, whoever has any interest in the financial system. But this has to be seen as a precursor, as something that is going to lead to a much more sophisticated financial system once the cyber uses come into play. And so I would urge Sucheta and Debashis, don't rest on your laurels. Please now prepare for a future book, maybe 5 years from now, on the cyber mess that we are going to land ourselves in. Thank you very much. And I'm very grateful for this opportunity. I'm sorry that I couldn't really argue your case, but ultimately it was better for you also, because judges sometimes don't like politicians to argue before them unless they know them in advance. In the Supreme Court, I have no problem. They'll immediately agree to hear me, and I've won so many cases in the Supreme Court. In fact, I've not lost any case in the Supreme Court. So therefore, but you were able to hang on there, and then of course, naturally, as people say, when people want to do good things for the country, somewhere the divine intervenes and gives you support, and you got support from most unexpected sources, and you won a victory which should be continued to be publicized and told that institutions can be brought to book. And this is an example of the book which has brought them to book. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Swamy, for your insightful and thought-provoking comments. We would just like to play a small video on the book that we have made. May I request my colleague Tushar to play? Thank you, Tushar. Before opening the floor for question and answer, I would like to invite some of those who had already read the book to say a few words about it. May I invite Mr. Pratik Kar, who is the former ED of SEBI?
First, let me thank Sucheta and Debashis for inviting me to this webinar. In fact, I've known Sucheta from around a little earlier than 1990, when Dr. S.S. the first chairman of SEBI, called me to Zoom and introduced me to her. So that was my knowing Sucheta. And Debu, of course, I knew a little later. A few words about the book. It makes a tremendous reading. I had the privilege of going to the book in the draft stage, and I had to perforce at the insistence of Debu and Sucheta. I would read every chapter. So I read every line of the book and made a tremendous read. In fact, first let me talk to the title itself, Absolute Power. It justifies the material in the book. And the cover, the strong fist, ready to punch anything, that's a sign of absolute power. I think I told Debu also, I like the cover of the book. And it comes out at dark. So the dark background and the fist, strong fist, shows absolute power. We're ready to crush everything. The book is, I think what is important is, the book is full of anecdotes and a lot of incidents and tidbits. And some of them are very shocking. When I read it, I was very shocked. Shocked for two reasons, because I was, having been a SEBI, I was knew the birth of NSE, the circumstances under which it was born, and that it had degenerated into this kind of situation was very shocking to me. I'm sure a lot of people will be shocked when they read the book. However, what is important is, what I've seen Sucheta and Debashis, they don't write anything unless they have verified things. In SEBI, from Dr. Dave to Rajiv Ramakrishna to Riyad Mehta to Jen Bajpai, all of them had very high regard, even when we did not quite agree with what she has written, but we knew that, look, that she never writes anything not verified. So that's very important to give credential to what is written in the book. The first part is good. The gambler's den to transparent tech platform. But that is what we had intended SEBI to be, NSE to be. I was there in SEBI till 2006. So the algo scam and the colo issues came much later. But however, the central piece of the book was part 2, which says about the above law with absolute power. I think that is very important. Those are a critical part of the book. And I think the two things here. First of all, people should read the book for taking lessons from this. There's a lot of lessons to learn. And also both the regulator, the government, as well as NSE, should take lessons and to correct themselves. All organizations go through ups and downs. And I've seen in the past, large organizations have this kind of issues. However, what is important is to take lessons and to correct themselves. If you don't do that and you still remain arrogant, then there's nothing. There's no way anybody can help the company, help the institution. The book is the documentation has been excellent. I can imagine the kind of work that has gone behind and the kind of labor which Sucheta and Debashis have done to get the things in order. And the chapter that is in the book follows very logical steps. What is important in this context is a book like this, if not written unless based on facts, can lead authors into trouble. But all of them, Sucheta and Debashis, have written everything based on whatever facts they have, and they have not till now written anything which is not verified. And they take a lot of pains. In fact, even when they wrote anything in SEBI, they took a lot of pains. And Sucheta did ask me, is it happening? I said yes, but I didn't know what she was writing, but she wrote it. But so therefore, he wrote everything which is verified. Otherwise, he doesn't write it. I think that's very important, to give the credibility to the book. The other issue is, the book has lessons in governance. Governance is a subject which I deal with, and I love it. It's close to my heart. Normally, excellence of a company, corporation, exchange, anything leads to public and stock market adulation. This adulation leads to arrogance. That arrogance leads to complacency and loss of accountability, and that leads to decline. This is the path. Take example, for the last 40 years, any company, anywhere in the world, this is the path they follow. Whether it's Enron, or the company in the New South Wales, or in Australia, or India, all companies follow this path. In fact, that is what the Gita says. Gita has said this in many ways. That, let me give the correct quote. Swamy is there, so I must give the correct quote. Gita says that Krodha Bhavati Samoha Sriti Bibhrava Sriti Bangshad Buddhi Nashad Parashati. I think that is the path which is bladed. In fact, if you read the Prince of Machiavelli's Prince also says the same thing for the decline in power chapter. He says the reason why power declined is because of this. I think that's all I have to say. Thank you so much again, Debashis and Sucheta, for inviting me this. And I recommend this book. This is a must-read book for anybody investing in the stock market.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much.
I must not get angry at this, because they take lessons and correct themselves. Both the NSE as a regulator and as well as a SEBI and the government. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. May I now invite R. Balakrishnan, the columnist of Moneylife, please?
Hello, good evening. Thank you, everybody. I had the good fortune to read the book much before all your readers can, because I think I was privileged to be given an advance copy by Sucheta and Debashis. And I had to read it in something like 2 sittings. It was not difficult. In fact, it took some time because I had to also add some comments along the way. I look at it this way, that I have also been a part of this journey along with them from pre-94. I think Debashis, Sucheta and I met each other probably somewhere around 88, 89. And since then, I think we have all been sharing stories over cups of coffee or glasses of beer, whatever it happens. So to me, this book is a fascinating piece of history. You look at who formed this company, this NSE, a very unlikely agency named IDBI, which is not known for anything good in today's market or today's condition. It gave a person like Mr. Nadkarni, Dr. Patil, who were unknown people, set up this super efficient engine to destroy the arrogance of the Bombay Stock Exchange. At that time, I used to work in DSP when NSE was formed. So my boss was Hemendra Kothari, who was quit as the president of the BSE. And he used to say, see, I don't know what will happen. So he was very sharp while he was lobbying against everything. He made sure that when NSE was formed, he became a member promptly, because the association with Merrill was going on. So you know that the foreigner would prefer this kind of a thing. So immediately, so it became. And when the FIS used to come, one of the pit stops for the investors used to be NSE. We meet Dr. Patil or or Mr. Pratipkar or any one of those, and it would go then Mr. Ravi Narayan. So NSE was an important step for us in the history of the stock exchange. I have seen the Bombay Stock Exchange, and to us, NSE was a refreshing change. And you look at what has happened since then, I think this is a piece of history which I do not think anybody else would have had the courage to write. I think hats off to Sucheta and Debashis for that. It documents how individuals grabbed power and money to destroy something. And to you and me, it did not make any difference whether the algo scam happened or not. That's what people would think. But you look at it this way. I ask people that you are willing to pay an advisor if he helps you to make 100 rupees or 1,000 rupees extra. But if somebody stops you from losing money, you don't want to pay. There is this mindset. So somebody who exposes a scam or a wrongdoing has the same thing. There is not much gratitude from people. But I think this is an extraordinarily important piece of history which documents the transition of the two exchanges and the degeneration in integrity of a platform which was merely supposed to be a facilitator of trade between a buyer and a seller. Look at what all they have done, like whether it was taking over institutions which were conflicting businesses or which they were regulating, where you don't want a referee to go into the football field and become a player, but all of those things have been done by NSE. And what is more shocking is the extraordinarily strong nexus between the NSE, the SEBI, and the Ministry of Finance. I think they made sure that these people have got away with just a slap on the wrist. Even this legal case which was fought, the money was paid for personal wrongdoings from the company treasury. The expenses and everything, I'm sure, were borne by NSE. And if there are shareholders in NSE, they should have been protesting against that. And there is absolutely no punishment. So this book, to me, documents everything beautifully, and it reads like a thriller to somebody in the market. It goes page to page. You can't stop till you reach the end. And you still are left with some questions, which I think the answers are there, but Debashis and Sucheta are very careful not to put anything which is not documented. For example, you'll want to know, who is this OPG? From nowhere he comes, and there is such a huge, he seems to be the architect of the algo scam. Is there somebody behind that? Who else is backing that money? Is there somebody else who got away? And you see this NSE, the way the plot was executed by the powers that be, that Ravi Narayan, Chitra, and they made sure that nothing crossed those two people, and they ensured continuity at the top and the bottom everywhere. Their IT company was a conduit. Everything was, I think, designed to make sure that there were no questions asked and there was too much power, absolute power in that sense. I think you see, today we are talking about two exchanges, outages and everything. There was a third exchange which could have come up easily. MCX could have come up. That was also throttled by NSE. So I think this book, I would definitely advocate to all old timers, because it has a lot of history of Bombay Stock Exchange also, and the transition, how it happened, and to everybody to read how technology has been used and abused to give unfair advantages to somebody. In algo scam, they calculated the loss of so much rupees, but there were investors on this side who were lost because of that. That has not been documented or cannot be documented. Who sold, how much was the quantification. And I still, as Mr. Pradeepkar said, or Dr. Swamy said, I think after 5 years or 10 years, one more book is needed, Debu and Sucheta. So please keep track of what is happening there. There's going to be one more big thing. Like today, I see the NSE wanting to sell gold coins. Temper proof. Of course, it's been spelled as temper proof in one of the brochures. So if you lose money on that, don't lose your temper. You see these kind of things happening. I think it's worrying when somebody goes beyond their brief of what they are supposed to do. So I wish everybody would read. I'm sure everybody would want to read this book. And I'm waiting for the next book from Debashis and Sucheta. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bala sir. We are now opening the session for some quick question and answer. Request all those who want to ask questions to use the raise hand feature on Zoom, and also request all of you to keep your questions short and to the point so that it can be answered, and other people will also get a chance to ask their questions.
We look forward to your books always, because they have the courage to in terms of take on issues which a lot of people don't. So, firstly, ma'am, just wanted to check and get your views on the fact that having seen this scam in a way on algo or whatever it is, uh, how do we see the institution today? Like some of the people who are responsible are no longer with the organization, but as we see the organization today, and maybe in the next 3 to 5 years or 10 years time, what is your opinion on the working of the institution as we see it today?
Okay, I think it's as Debashish said in his talk, in the last year, you had 22 brokers that failed. And if I look back to what happened in 92, this is exactly the kind of failures that happened on the Bombay Stock Exchange that led to the formation of SEBI and led to the creation of the NSE. But 22 brokers failing, people's savings have been decimated, and there is zero action from SEBI. So what I would actually want is to take forward from what Dr. Swamy said, that we've tried to write this book in a simple manner. We hope our members of parliament are going to read it and understand that they are our elected representatives. They need to start questioning the regulator and ask the regulator, is it doing its job? NSE is the first line regulator. SEBI is regulating the NSE. And we don't see any action. In fact, even in the algo scam, which happened in 2015, everything has been challenged. It's moving at glacial speed. It's not yet complete. And SEBI is not obliged to say anything because who's asking SEBI? This finance minister is not asking SEBI. No member of parliament is asking. And, probably barring Dr. Swamy, who has said a lot of things here openly, nobody bothers to question. I think we should ask Dr. Swamy if he would like to react to this.
Well, I think, in order to take up this matter, you must have a modicum of knowledge of economics and finance to understand. And I would say I know members of parliament who understand, but they are on the other side. So they are not going to support us. And what I think is the process that you have started, if it now comes to the newspapers and amongst the younger students in colleges, those who are graduated and now wanting to become financial experts in the private sector. These are the people who should be encouraged. Our people like to play safe. And these are, you can see when you withstood it. Otherwise, look at how they came with 100 crore defamation case with a battery of lawyers. And it was just, people don't realize that when you pick up a fight which is morally correct, somehow events happen which will give you the necessary backing. But that confidence people don't have. So I would say that, the way something can be done is perhaps the failure to process can be taken up in the courts, and that would activate the government because they will be forced to reply. And from that angle, we can move and make one case successful. Then after years, then it becomes that the agencies will know that they are answerable. That's the way to go about. But at this moment, unless people like you also start coming to parliament, getting elected to parliament, I don't think we are in a position to get the parliament to get active on this. Although there are committees where if I get into one of them, I've been in the health committee and I've played a major role, thanks, even though I'm not a doctor in the formal sense of a MD, I'm only a PhD. But I think committees are places where we can target and make them hold hearings and call people like you and call the NSE and so on, and then write a report. From then on, it can be taken forward. I think that would be a better route.
Thank you, sir.
Committees of Parliament, Committees of Parliament, yeah, sure. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. May I request Arvind to unmute Mr. Shailesh Gandhi, former Citizen Information Commissioner.
Good evening, sir. First and foremost, congratulations to Devu and Sucheta for this fabulous thing. And they are the monitors of a powerful regulator. Mr. Swamy, you may realize, tell me which regulators are really performing well. By and large, most, and we are not building institutions in this, irrespective of the political party involved. All political parties are in sync with each other not to build institutions. Can we see better institutions being built? And one small question to Dr. Swamy. Sir, our parliamentary committees are all held in secrecy.
Yeah, that's it.
If I depose before the parliamentary committee, I have to sign saying I will not talk about it.
Right.
Why do we need this kind of opacity?
I agree. I have had this problem in the health committee when I came out with the BAT research being conducted by the Wuhan Institute and the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research together without government permission. But unfortunately, no action could be taken against me because that would lead to further problems. So the committee just said, they just asked me whether I'm going to take this forward. I've taken, unfortunately, the government has stood by me on this matter. So I think what your larger point is, what is the use of having a committee meeting if it doesn't get it publicized? Look at the American committees. I mean, they're all over the TV on a daily basis. So that is what we need to do. And I think you put an idea into my head. Let me see if I can work something to remove this bar for making public hearings on important matters of standing committees.
Yeah, thank you so much and good evening, everyone. NSE case has been intriguing me since the defamation case that was filed against Moneylife. I happened to read the Bombay High Court judgment and I was like, wow, if this suit was not a blatant misuse of power by a dominant corporation, I would struggle to really define what is. I was honored by the request of Debashis to proofread the book. Interestingly, the book starts with the same defamation case, and therefore I was able to really personally relate to this book. This book is very interesting, extremely well researched, and most importantly, very well narrated. The book has made all the topics very easy to understand, even for the people who do not have a background in either finance or the technology. While the shenanigans of NSE have been already discussed by all others, I would like to add that the story of evolution of NSE and its initial struggles is really what I found most interesting. Like Bala sir mentioned about unlikely institution like IDBI being, for the lack of better word, mother of NSE, the initial challenges to conceive and implement national infrastructure, deal with the bureaucracy, setting up the technological backbone for this, and bring efficiency to the market is very, very, very interesting. I would say that this book logically flows from the wild ways of BSE brokers, well documented in their earlier book, The Scam, and which is already beautifully portrayed in the serial. What I find most interesting in this thing is I wouldn't have learned about the stellar role played by Mr. R.S. Patil and Mr. G.V. Ramakrishna. Both of these would have just remained the names for me had I not read the book. Net, a very, very interesting book. Definitely read it. Interestingly, I find that it is available on Kindle Unlimited as well. So no real reason for anybody to not download it and read it. Thank you.
Thank you, Rohit. May I request Arvind to unmute Mr. Aditya Sikal, please?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon to everyone in India. I'm calling from Australia right now. Again, kudos to the Moneylife team, as it's not unexpected, let's put it that way. My question to, Dr. Swamy and Sucheta and Debashis is that, every time when we've had these kind of incidents coming, and if we do a deep dive analysis, it all comes down to people in positions of power. And like it's an irony that NSE was set up by stellars like Dr. Patil. So you had a set of excellent people who created a world-class institution, and then you had a set of crazy people who destroyed it virtually. Now, how do we ensure, and I think that's the bane of Indian governance system, that how do we ensure that no matter whether we don't get the right people in, we should definitely make a system whereby we don't get the bad people in. And year after year, people who've grown, I mean, young people like myself who've grown up and now lived abroad and you've seen India from inside and outside. We feel that ultimately it is this which is the root cause of myriad of problems that we see in India, and especially in well-governed societies, that plays a very big role. So I mean, I know it may not be an easy answer, but if you agree with me, is there a way out? Because these kind of things will keep happening. I mean, and the other question is that when do we have such more interesting stories coming out? Not only from people like Debashis and Sucheta, but I think we need a lot more active financial journalism in India, to bring out such stories. Thank you.
Well, I have a very, very simple test. And this is a mantra of Charlie Munger, who's Warren Buffett's partner. And that clarifies everything. As he said, show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome. So if there is an incentive to do what they're doing and there is an incentive to get away by doing what they're doing, this is the outcome you will have. And the same applies to the regulator. There is an incentive not to act. And so that is the outcome. Now, that is very obvious to me, but I don't know why people go around in circles asking all kinds of questions, chasing the tail, but just focus on incentive. Who had the incentive to support NSE, all the stuff that they're doing from 2004 to 2015? Just focus on that and you'll have the answer. If you have the answer and then you don't act, then of course you are having some incentive of not. Finally, it's incentive, right? So that explains everything according to me.
Can I add one point to that, if I may?
Yes, Dr.
Yeah, please.
I think in India, there are not only two contending issues, as you say, incentive and effort. Indians are, by and large, thanks to these years of foreign invasions and looting of our country, are risk averters. Now, in the case of you two, that is the Debashis and Sucheta, you took a risk. So the question is, there's no incentive to take a risk. We are risk averters. We want to play safe. That's why everybody wants a government job or a company executive job. Nobody wants to invest except a few. There's no risk taking as an attribute of character, unless you teach our people to take risk. Every family teaches their children to play safe. And that's all we do all our life, play safe. There can be no big reward unless you take risk. And risk, of course, has to be calculated and all that, all those preliminaries are there. But the fact is their mentality should be, this is worth doing, it's risky, but I'm going to take the risk. That attitude you build in your children, you will see in one generation, there will be a big change in the country.
I have a question, Dr. Swamy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, China, which was not subjugated to such long periods of dominance by foreign powers, you had mentioned to me some time ago that the Chinese are very docile people, right? So, how do we reconcile the fact that they were never dominated? They were more or less been independent, but they're still quite docile.
They're still docile. No, the public is docile because they have never seen democracy. The only period there was democracy was from 1913 to 1928, when Sun Yat-sen had brought about that revolution, overthrew the monarchy. And then the Japanese War came, and then the communists came, and then that is more or less another form of a monarchy. So I don't think the Chinese people have had a choice of being to see what it means to have freedom. Even there where people are, for instance, in Taiwan, they hold regular elections now. Hong Kong was also like that. But it's not enough for them to withstand the if tomorrow there is force. In Singapore, for example, it's a Chinese-dominated society, but there's hardly any democracy. It's a very highly controlled democracy. And so I think in India, we have a tradition of called Shastrat, where Shankaracharya coined that word when he went around the country debating and converting people. Though he said, if I lose, I will convert to your religion of Buddhism. And if you lose the debate, you convert to my Advaita. And the whole country he converted. So that tradition of argumentation, you don't have one God, you have multiple choice, you have multiple paths. That tradition is what has kept us democratic. But other countries, including China, have not had that.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, sir. With that, we bring this session to a close. We are grateful to Dr. Swamy for launching the book today. A big thank you to all of you who joined us online for the launch of Absolute Power. Please do buy the book. Thanks again. Good night.
Thank you so much, Dr. Swamy. Really appreciate
Thank you.
Thank you for writing the book.
Thank you for all your help.
It's a very, very good book. And we are very happy that you have spent so much time and so much courage and put it all on black and white.
Thank you so much.
Okay. I'm serious about getting you into Parliament. Somewhere I must find. You can get nominated like me. Then that's the nicest. Huh? Lok Sabha, everybody has romanticized it, but it's terrible. I've been 3 times to Lok Sabha and 3 times to Rajya Sabha. Any day Rajya Sabha. And of that, if you are nominated by PM, you don't even have to fill out a piece of paper. And no assets and this and that, nothing. And you have the same power.
Thank you.